Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 35, I talk with Tom Norton and Kal Rubinson about all the cool stuff we saw at the CEDIA trade show. Coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, episode 35, CEDIA Roundup. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here with UltimateAVMag.com and HomeTheaterMag.com. This week, I have two guest geeks with me to talk about the CEDIA trade show that just wrapped up in Atlanta. Tom Norton, senior editor of Home Theater, and my very first repeat guest on the show is here with us. Hey, Tom, welcome back.
Hi, I'm here in the corner.
Actually, that's Kal. There's Tom.
Oh, there's me.
There you are. Welcome back to the show. Really appreciate you coming back the day after we got back from CEDIA.
Right.
And also joining us is Kal Rubinson, contributing editor for Stereophile, who was also at the show most of the entire run there. Hey, Kal, thanks for joining us.
Good to see you.
Yes. And thanks to both of you in particular for being here the day after the show, because Tom and I, at least, got home close to midnight last night, which was about 3 a.m. Eastern time, which is what we were used to in Atlanta. Kal, you were in New York anyway, so you didn't have a time change to deal with. So
no, in fact, that's one of the advantages of Atlanta for me.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Those who are tuned into the live video stream at live.twit.tv or logged into the chat room at irc.twit.tv can post questions for Tom, Kal, and me about the show, and I'll pass along as many as I can as we talk about our Atlanta adventure. First of all, why don't you give me some general impressions of the show? How did you think attendance was? What was the mood of the show? Kal, let's start with you.
Well, I think it was apparent that the attendance was a little bit down. I don't have any of the numbers, but
no, I don't either.
I spoke to a number of people. I mean, that's the topic of the day every time you go to a show. You know, what do you think? How are you feeling? How many people came by, and so forth. Mm-hmm. But most of the people I spoke to seemed to be fairly positive. I think it's almost a self-selecting thing. The people who attend and the people who are showing the exhibits, even if they're fewer, are the more optimistic and aggressive, in the good sense, people who are looking forward to utilizing the show. And what we've lost are people from the other end of the spectrum, those who are pessimistic or there for very superficial reasons. I don't mean to dump on them. Everybody has their priorities.
Sure. Tom, what did you think?
I agree with Kal on those points. Also, I talked to a number of manufacturers, asked them what they thought of the show, and generally, the usual answer is the quantity is down, but the quality is good. In other words, they had good visitors instead of. I mean, it's been a pattern in the last few shows that I've noticed. The attendance seems to be down, but for instance, a dealer might bring in, where before they brought in 5 people, they might bring in 2 people this time. Mm-hmm. So they might get as much business done, but they don't. The only thing they're missing is some of their employees don't get the look at the industry that they would have otherwise. But
sure.
As far as the exhibitors are concerned, it makes comparatively little difference, at least in the short term.
It might even. Sorry, go ahead, Kal.
You know, if you consider the time and the general costs involved, those who are looking forward to valuing the experience and getting something out of it, I mean, in a business sense, are the ones who will go. Those who are questioning whether it's worth their effort, and that may be, they're probably right, those people tend to be less likely to go. Mm-hmm.
I talked to a number of people, too. I had basically the same impressions. The attendance looked pretty down to me. That is, the traffic in the aisles of the convention center looked lighter than I can remember it. And a number of manufacturers told me that they've lost a number of dealers This show, of course, is for manufacturers to set up booths and show off their latest wares, not only in audio-video, but also in home control systems, security systems, centralized heating and air conditioning and vacuum cleaner systems. CEDIA, after all, stands for the Custom Electronics Design and Installation Association. So it's pretty high-end stuff intended to be installed by a custom installer into a custom home. But even at that, even as we hear in the general news that, you know, oh, the rich are doing okay, they're getting all sorts of tax breaks, blah, 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 even this end of the industry is suffering. Well, Speakercraft, for example, told me that they've lost about 15% of their dealers, who are the people who actually come to the show to see the new stuff and hopefully place orders for the new stuff as it becomes available. So Speakercraft experienced a 15% drop, and I'm sure a lot of other manufacturers did too. Some of the manufacturers that used to have huge booths, in fact, had really small ones. And so that was...
weren't there at all.
Some weren't even there at all, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is an expensive proposition. You're right about that for a manufacturer to set up a booth and do all that stuff. Boy, I heard that the air conditioning wasn't on in the convention center during setup. People were just sweating like pigs. Oh man, it was hot and muggy in Atlanta. My God, it was awful.
Part of the problem is that during setup they have all these huge loading dock doors open, and if you air condition the floor, you're actually air conditioning the outside world, which in Atlanta
that's true. Yeah, that is true.
Probably a hopeless task.
Yeah.
But what compounded it, of course, was that it was hot and it got extremely muggy because during that afternoon there was a downpour, and so it probably is 100% humidity as well as 100 degrees in the temperature. Yes.
No thanks. No thanks.
We watched it from the air-conditioned security of the press room above it. It's almost like being in a luxury box.
It was almost like being in a luxury. You know, I had that same thought because here we are in the press room on the second floor above the convention center floor, and there's these giant windows looking out onto the convention center floor, and it was lovely and air-conditioned and quite pleasant, although the press room did not have nearly enough water. I was trying to really stay hydrated. And the press room normally has tons of water for journalists, and it disappeared by 2 or 3 o'clock. So note to CEDIA, more water. Hey, well, listen, what were some of the interesting things you saw at the show? Tom, let's start with you. Oh, Tom disappeared. Is he there?
Well, you want me to start?
Well, how about Cal? Why don't you start?
Why not? I'll tap dance for a while and see what happens.
Yeah. What were some of the interesting things you saw? You were covering more audio, I think, than video, right?
Well, almost exclusively. I mean, it's hard to ignore the video because it's in your face, literally.
There's Tom.
No, what I liked was, we're seeing a lot of sorting out of the market in a number of ways. The traditional audiophile who doesn't go to CEDIA, of course, is an analog guy, and he may have a home theater system or something. But now that digital and home theater are so ubiquitous, what we're seeing is a kind of feeling out of where things belong. I mean, we have both players and disc players and AVRs and server boxes that can access the internet for services. But surely you don't need a system that has access from every piece in it, because that's the advantage of networking is that if one of your devices, which is networked to the others, has access, the others don't need it. They work through that one. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is one of the things that we're seeing is that people are trying to decide where things belong. And it's a burden for the manufacturer, of course, because no manufacturer wants to be regarded as feature deficient. So we'll end up with redundant features the way things are now. And
well, I sure see that in video in terms of having TVs and Blu-ray players and AV receivers, for that matter, all having internet access and access to internet radio and Pandora and Netflix and so on. It does seem to be quite redundant, and yet I agree with you completely that no manufacturer wants to look like they're feature deficient.
Yeah, and I mean we see it in audio, and it's something that seems to be playing out here in that analog outputs from digital players are a debatable thing now because you're going to connect it to an AVR or a processor that has digital input, and it's more efficient and in some ways sounds better. But the real thing is that it depends on where you are in the market. If you're selling a very cheap player, for example, you can delete your analog stuff because it can be plugged into an AVR without question. If you're going to be in a high-end product, then you got to have everything. And a lot of the cost of what we see in high-end disc players is the analog component, which, frankly, some users may not even use.
And would you agree with me that I've always said that digital electronics, high-quality digital electronics, become less and less expensive as they mature because you can stamp out 1 million chips once you've designed it, but high-quality analog electronics will always remain expensive because you can't really cheapen it.
And I think it may get worse because as all of the electronics industry moves away from analog, you got to have analog somewhere, at least so far, until we can get a digital stream right through the loudspeaker. But,
maybe jack into our brain, right?
Yeah, we can have implants. But for now, at least, what's going to happen is that the digital end will become, because of the emphasis, more and more efficient, whereas sourcing analog componentry will become more and more expensive as it becomes more and more of a niche part of the industry. And you see that in you look at any one of a number of brands that offer a wide range of products, and you find a huge gap between, say, the low end. I wouldn't say low end, but the universal players from, say, Marantz and Denon, which are running under $1,000, and then their flagship products, which run $4,000 to $7,000, and all of that cost is in the bulk and the solid construction of the higher end product, but all of that is in analog. And the analog is disproportionately expensive these days, and I think it'll get worse.
And as you say, more and more of a niche market, less and less used by the majority of people who might be buying the product. So it's maybe money wasted.
Well, I mean, it depends on the consumer. I mean, you should make a wise decision. It's very difficult sometimes, but it's gotten to the point where I don't think one could say that, I'll just buy it all and then I'll use what I want. It's the best player. Well, if you're not going to use a significantly expensive portion of it, it may not be the best thing for you.
Yeah. Tom, what'd you think in general terms? What were the interesting things that you saw, or trends maybe that you saw? And of course, we've lost Tom again. Tom's having trouble with his Skype connection. So he's back. Okay, Tom, before you lose it again, what were some of the interesting things you saw at the show? Trends, perhaps, or products that you found particularly interesting?
Well, certainly 3D is a trend, but we recognized that from CES last year. That wasn't any surprise that we're going to see a lot of 3D projectors, especially at CEDIA.
At CES, there weren't a lot of 3D projectors. There were a lot of 3D flat panels. There were a lot of 3D flat panels, but there were probably half a dozen 3D projectors at least. So we did. Yeah, I guess that's true. But how many were there at this show? There must have been twice or three times that.
Well, that's what I meant. I meant there weren't any 3D projectors at CES, but we got the 3D is a big splash spiel at CES, and then we started getting projectors at CEDIA.
Right.
But, I would say that on the projector side, what impressed me the most, first off, what impressed me the most was that most of the projection displays were excellent. I mean, there weren't a lot of, there were a few that weren't what they should have been, but overall it was a surprisingly good array of demos. I'd say JVC with their new projectors, which are all but one are 3D.
They looked great. JVC is always at the top of the projector field, and these new ones really looked great, I thought, too.
Yep. Epson's new projectors look great too. In fact, they now have a variation of LCOS projectors in their line. They still have a LCD projector in the line, which actually looked quite good for just over $3,000.
Yeah,
They have,
amazing. At the super high-end show where you had 50,000 projectors, here's this little $3,000 projector that was just kicking ass.
And and was basically competing on, given its size screen, was competing with just about anything else I saw.
Yeah.
And they also have a variation of LCOS. It's slight variation, but it's the same similar reflective LCD technology. And they have most of their higher end projectors are now, there's 3 of them. But they top out at 7,000. I think they start somewhere in the 3s. I don't have the exact number here, but there's 3 different models, and they were quite impressive. Also, I was impressed by Projection Design's 235 technology, their Aviello. That was a very pricey piece, about 40,000 if I remember right. But it's a way
I think it's 30 something, or 40.
Yeah. I think it was pretty close to 40. But the technology behind that is to use a larger chip and process the 1920 by 820, which is actually roughly 1920 by 820 on a 235 movie on Blu-ray.
Right. We should explain to everybody that when you get a widescreen movie, which has an aspect ratio of 2.35 to 1 on Blu-ray, the number of pixels being used are 1920 across by about 820 or so up and down, leaving black bars on the top and bottom. Because the 1920 by 1080 is 1.78 to 1 aspect ratio. So you have this wasted information, and we just lost Tom again, so I'll explain this. And so what we've done up till now, there's a couple of ways to solve that problem. People hate black bars above and below the picture. So what you can buy a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio screen. Here's Tom again.
Yeah, I got back quickly though.
Oh, good. And you can stick a lens in front, another lens in front of the projector, and which stretches it horizontally, and then electronically stretch the image vertically to fill up the 1080 pixels. But what the projection design, and also a digital projection has one too, they actually just put more pixels on the screen to begin with. In fact, I think it's 2560 by 1080.
Right, something like that. So basically they do processing instead of using an anamorphic lens and a larger chip. That's what it comes down to.
Right,
and
exactly.
Of course, there is processing with an anamorphic lens vertically. You have to process vertically to get the vertical. Yeah. So, but I guess you could say in theory, the state of processing is less likely to have problems than with an anamorphic lens.
Well, certainly with an anamorphic lens, you'll have optical distortion, and you'll lose some light going through it.
Right. You gain light actually with any process that uses more pixels, even though they're not real resolution pixels. So with an anamorphic lens, you anamorphic setup with an anamorphic lens, you gain some light by using all the pixels on the chip, on the 1920 by 1080 chip. Even though they're not only 820 of them are real genuine resolution pixels.
Right.
But you use the full 1080, but you get more light, but then you lose some light through the lens because of the lens.
Exactly. Cal, you mentioned earlier that you couldn't help but see some video. Did you see anything in particular that was very impressive to you?
No, only that big Panasonic flat panel.
Oh, of course, the 152-inch?
Yes.
Right, yes.
You gonna get one in your apartment?
Actually, I told my wife about it. Because she's anti-projector. She says, "Oh, that sounds great."
So you told her the price.
But I didn't.
Until you told her the price, yeah.
Right.
Did you find the price? I didn't actually get anyone to tell me the price of that thing. 152-inch diagonal plasma TV. Did you get a price?
No.
Is it over? I think it's well over $100,000. Must be.
Yeah, I don't think they were talking price at CES either, and they showed at CES. I think it's like whatever they can get.
Well, now here's a question for you, Cal. You mentioned your wife is very anti-projector, and I think that's very common among women who seem to really, though, like flat panels. Yeah. And I guess your wife is in that camp, huh?
Yeah, I must say though, we've been to a number of homes that have projection systems, and she's enjoyed the movie, but I think she doesn't want to have another box in the room, and we have so many of them, and right, there are always new ones. In addition to that, it depends upon the actual physical configuration of the rooms in which you are going to watch. Both of the rooms that we have, there is no place to build it into the back walls because both back walls are outside walls. And so it's a purely aesthetic thing on her part from the point of view of room decoration, and has nothing to do with her appreciation or lack of it of a good projector system.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's certainly something that the members of CEDIA, the installers, that's what their job is to custom install projection systems and audio systems and so on. So there'd probably be a way to do it. For example, having a projector on a lift that came down out of the ceiling when you were going to watch a movie and then disappear back up into the ceiling when you're done. She'd probably dig that, right?
Oh, granted, but I'm a primitive when it comes to such things. I mean, I still insist on having the speakers out in the room, not in walls or anything like that. And the other thing, of course, is you have to realize that you do realize, I'm sure, and I'm sure Tom realizes also, as a reviewer, you're always changing things. So the more you build something in, customize it, the more constrained you are about swapping it for something else.
True enough. Tom, you have that experience too.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing before I drop off again.
Yes, please do.
On the three projectors, projector demos I mentioned, only the JVC was 3D. Okay, the Epson is not, the LCD is not 3D. Currently the LCOS, the three LCOS projectors they have are not 3D, but I understand from you, Scott, that they will be updatable later with a firmware update. It's not.
That's what they said. Yeah.
Yeah, since they're already 120 hertz projectors, they can do it. And the projection design was not 3D, even though it's $40,000. So, and that's not upgradable as far as I know. So
no, I don't think so either. But no, you're exactly right. And we have to make that distinction between 2D and 3D. Some people are really interested in 3D. Others really aren't interested. I was going to ask you, Cal, since
some are actually
you're not
quite negative.
Your response is quite negative to 3D?
No, I'm sorry. We overlapped. But I'm not completely negative, but I think a lot of people are. I see people posting on the internet and on forums and stuff, and they're quite nasty about it. I'm not a visual person to a great degree, and I like a good image, but and I've seen quite a few 3Ds in the movies and at the show, but it doesn't turn me on the way sound does. So I'm never going to be at the cutting edge of video.
Understood. Yeah. But you are at the cutting edge of audio. You're the guy in Stereophile, which is primarily a two-channel magazine, a magazine about two-channel audio reproduction. You're the guy that covers multi-channel audio. So you are forward-thinking in one respect, at least.
Yeah, well, I'm not all bad. But it's sometimes a very precarious little position to be in, because I tried to interest the readers of Stereophile in multi-channel, and many of them dismiss it because they associate it purely with, home theater in a box and, packaged systems. And some of those are bringing out new ideas. One of the things I wanted to bring up here is that there was finally a product at this CEDIA from a company, based on technology from a company called Summit Wireless. And they've been developing this technology for about 4 years. And now Hyperion, the speaker company, Internet Direct Speaker Company, is coming out with a system based on Summit Wireless's technology. So it's going to be a multi-channel wireless system. All the speakers are wireless.
Wow.
And it's full bandwidth, 2496 transmission to them. And you just plug them into an AC outlet where you want to put them. And the system pings the speakers so that it can identify which one is front left, simply because that's where it is. You don't have to connect it up in any special way. It also calculates the distance and the levels, and it does this in a matter of seconds. Wow. Did you hear a demo of it? Yeah. I thought that the Hyperion was it's a standard Hyperion Intimus line speakers, which are quite good. Quite good. The 4T, what? I say they are quite good. Yes, they are. So what they simply add on is the transmitter-receiver system, and then now the speakers are all bi-amped internally, so they have good power handling without worrying about overrunning them in some way. But the neat thing is, of course, is you can just put them where you find them, where you would like to put them. It may not even be the best place for acoustics, but this will be optimized by the system. And it doesn't take much knowledge. I think it's going to be a great boon for people, and I assume there are a lot of them, who don't set things up right. They buy it, they plug it in. If it works, that's the way they live with it. And this will make
one point to be made about that. Obviously, when we're talking wireless, the speakers themselves do have to be plugged in for their power amps.
That's true.
Right. So you need to have at least one wire going to them from an outlet.
Yeah.
That's true, but the advantage, of course, is that there's usually a power outlet on each wall in most homes built in the last 50 or 60 years, and you don't have to run connectors and cables either around the room or through the floor or through the walls in order to set this up. In fact, you can almost trivially move the system from one room to another.
Yeah.
Set it up and get it going again. And then, of course, the other thing that I found that I was surprised by in this was, and it should be obvious, is that the receiver that goes with it doesn't have any power amplifiers in it. It doesn't even have output connectors. It just has an antenna. The result is that the receiver is really tiny and fits almost anywhere. I thought it was quite a forward-looking product. And I think that this type of technology, and there are some others that are developing some, is going to be very important in the future.
Tom, did you see that demo or hear that demo?
No, that one I missed. But actually, demoing Kal, or is it just they had an old booth?
It was the demo. It was the last demo room on the end, number 16.
That hall was pretty darn big.
Yeah.
I was very glad that it was in Hall B, for those of you who don't live in Atlanta and haven't been to the Georgia World Congress Center. It's massive. Last year they were in Hall C, which was way the hell and gone. This year they moved it a little closer, but even that hall, just that one hall that they were in, was gigantic, and not even any of us could have seen everything there.
No, there were a couple of manufacturers that managed to get stuck in Hall C.
Yes, there were.
Yeah, Runco had lined up their press event in a hall.
Yeah, they had their press event in Hall C, which was this much farther away hall. And boy, having to go to that. Kal, did you have to go into Hall C at all, or were you spared that?
I went in there by accident. I just didn't pay attention, and when I arrived, I assumed it was in Hall C again. When I got there and it was empty, I was quite stunned.
The hall to yourself.
But it only took. My real fear was that it wasn't so much the wrong hall, but the wrong week.
Yeah, right.
That has happened to people. We had someone going to one show a few years ago that went to the wrong city.
Oh man! Well, fortunately, none of us did that.
But I don't know how much I was offline for about 30 seconds. That Runco had their press event in Hall C,
right?
Which was a long hall, and I found out later in the show that Polk Audio, who I'd have liked to have visited, was showing in Hall C also. But they apparently packed up by Saturday and were gone. So
yeah, because probably nobody was coming to their booth or to their room.
Yes, yeah. Well, somebody else had their sound room. They were supposed to be in two sound rooms, and when I got there, Definitive Technology was in those two sound rooms. So they told me, I asked, "Where's Polk?" And they said, "Oh, they're over in Hall C."
Man. Yeah. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys was, of the products that you saw, what are you looking forward to reviewing once it becomes available? And Tom, let's start with you while you're still on with us here.
Oh gosh, as far as projectors are concerned, there's a whole load of them. I'm sure some of them will probably be reviewed elsewhere by someone else. But certainly the new JVC LCOS projectors, both Epsons, the LCOS and the LCD. I wouldn't mind having a closer look at the projection design. Those are the three that I mentioned previously.
Right.
Certainly we'll get Sony. Sony exhibited a 3D projector also. We haven't mentioned them. They did show a 3D VPL VW90, which was, once they still have the 85, their 2D projector is still on the line. The 90 is 10,000 and the 85 is I believe 8,000 or 8,500, somewhere in that ballpark. that stays in the line. They look identical as far as the case is concerned. So if you know it's there's no. Whereas the new JVC 3D projectors are a redesign from last year's. They look different.
Yeah, center mounted lens for one thing.
Right, center mounted lens, and they're more they're rectangular, like the early JVC projectors were, rather than being rather long and narrow. But JVC, also, they still have a 2D projector in the line, actually two different versions. They're both identical, one's for the pro sales channel, the other's for the consumer sales channel. They have it's a 250 or the 250 Pro, I believe.
And something like that.
Yeah, it's quite attractively priced. I'm trying to recall exactly what it was, but it was around $3,000 or somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. The least expensive JVC 3D projector was $4,500 list, and that's the least expensive 3D projector at the show. I'm amazed that the prices for 3D projectors went from $4,500 for that JVC up to, I think, $80,000 for the Sim 2 dual projector system. They actually take two of their high-end projectors, mount them in a frame, and use one for the right eye and one for the left eye, and charge about $80,000 for that.
I'd actually like to raise a point on the audio side that maybe Cal can chime in. Is that while CEDIA is not an audio show, an audio demo show, there were some interesting audio demos, and did he hear anything that sounded particularly promising? And I can let him kick it off. And
in terms of audio quality, you're talking about
audio quality. Yes, again, there weren't a lot, but see if he had any.
What were your favorite audio demos there, Cal?
Okay. Well, I owe you a quarter, Tom.
Okay.
There are a number of impressive things, but I thought the most impressive speakers I heard were relatively modestly priced. There's the Golden Air Technology, Sandy Gross's new company, that has a pair of very nice three-ways of at $2,500 a pair, and they're extremely graceful as well as clean sounding, and with a lot of oomph. And at a slightly lower price, Martin Logan showed a hybrid electrostatic for $2,000 a pair called the Electromotion ELS, and it was a killer. I mean, it was just spacious and open and really clean sounding, and that $2,000 for that kind of technology is quite reasonable.
Yeah, seriously.
But I think the most surprising thing, which I don't know if you got to hear, was that at Pioneer Electronics they showed a very low-priced line of speakers.
Tom, you mentioned this too to me. You heard that one.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Cal.
Well, these were developed originally not for Pioneer to sell, and in fact, most of the line is being sold through Best Buy, and we've heard of them before. But these are low-cost speakers. They were developed by Andrew Jones, who does TAD for Pioneer as well, but they were not produced through the normal Pioneer production channels, which he said would have raised the cost considerably. So Best Buy is selling a two-way floor stander in this series for $200 a pair. I didn't get to hear that one.
Wow, $200?
Yes, but I haven't had a chance to get up to Best Buy since I've come back, and I want to hear that, although I don't have great hope for how it'll sound on their floor.
Yes. Well, what did you hear? Which of those models did you hear there?
I heard a smaller one. It was a bookshelf with a 6-inch woofer and a 1-inch dome tweeter that Best Buy decided not to take. So it's not available at Best Buy, and therefore is being sold by Pioneer directly, and it will cost $199 through Pioneer. But it was remarkably good. Of course, it was being demonstrated on steel stands that are probably more than $199 each, and Pioneer's traveling sound room, which is a very good room that they use at most of these shows. So it had all the benefits, but still, it was a remarkably clean and full-sounding little two-way. And I think it was instructive for a couple of reasons. One is how good a speaker you can make for that kind of money. And second of all, how important the acoustics and setup are in making something sound good.
Yes. So I agree completely. In fact, that brings me to my next point. But before I get there, I wanted to ask Tom, you heard that speaker too, right? Oh, and Tom's gone for the moment. While we're waiting for Tom to come back, we did get a question from the chat room. which was if any of us had a chance to attend the THX video class that was being offered at CEDIA for $49. Now, Cal, I'm sure you didn't. I didn't either, and I'm sure Tom didn't because Tom and I have already taken it. And Cal, you're not really a video guy, but you know, this course is normally $2,000 or $1,900, and to get it for $49 at CEDIA, that was a serious steal. So I hope some people took advantage of that because that was quite the opportunity. But it does bring up the other point that I wanted to make about this. Tom, are you back with us?
Yes.
Good. First of all, did you hear those little pioneers?
Yes, I did. I was as impressed as Cal was with them, and I hadn't heard that that particular model was not going to go into Best Buy. I suspect that I mentioned to Andrew Jones. I said for $200 a pair. You know, he as Cal mentioned, he does the TAD speakers also for Pioneer. They're actually under the TAD brand,
which is a huge, very high-end brand.
Yeah, there's two TAD speakers. One is around $40,000 a pair, and those are large bookshelves. And there's a stand mount that's I don't know where that falls in, well over $60,000 a pair or something like that. As I mentioned to Andrew, I said, you know, there are capacitors in the crossover networks of your TAD speakers that cost more than these little speakers cost.
Well, before you dropped out that last time, Cal made a great point, which is that the Pioneer demo demonstrated how important the environment is to hearing good sound, and he was pointing out that Pioneer had their traveling demo room there, and it's somewhat acoustically treated, and that led me to the Procella demo room, which was actually THX certified. And it was sitting there on the showroom floor, and this company Procella, which makes some pretty nice speakers, I think. I've never actually had any real experience with them, but my impression is that they're quite good. Cal, correct me if I'm wrong. But they were demonstrating them in this fully THX certified room, a portable room. Basically, THX told me that they set it up in their factory. THX came out and certified it, measured it, did all their stuff. Then they tore it down, set it up in the convention center. And THX had to come out and recertify it. Did you guys hear that room?
I did. They were playing it too loud for me, so it was hard to make a judgment, real judgment on the speakers. Procella, as far as I know, the first time I saw them was at CEDIA last year. It's not a name that's known in the audiophile business, in the audiophile market. They may come from the pro side. They may have had some. I think
that's where they mostly are from. Is in the pro side.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're mostly powered speakers, which means the amps is similar to those Aperions, except they're not wireless. The amps are built into the cabinets, except for the surrounds, which had to be powered by external amplification.
Right.
The most impressive thing about the room was that.
We lost Tom again.
Well, I can finish his sentence.
Please do.
I can finish his. I thought the most impressive thing about the room were the doors. The doors weighed about 300 pounds each.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, back. You want to finish the story?
Back. Yes. No, I was just going to say when they closed the door, you couldn't hear anything going on the show floor.
Yes,
it was like
exactly.
You somewhere else. You had been transported back to somewhere in the middle of Montana, I think.
Certainly that's true. I noticed that too, that the room was very quiet and you couldn't hear anything outside when the door was closed. And that was very impressive. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it might have been a situation where they could have capitalized on that by having a quieter demo where you could listen for much more fine detail than using. It was more of a standard kind of home theater demo where they literally gave you action scenes with a lot of noise and explosions and blasting.
Yes. I was disappointed in that too. And
even the music example they used, which was a Herbie Hancock cut.
Chick Corea.
A lot of Chick Corea. You know, I have to apologize, Chick Corea. They didn't say who it was. And
it was Return to Forever live at Montreux, and that was very nice, although
it was
too loud.
Still too loud. Yeah,
it was too loud, and I felt an excessive, mid-bass energy in that it didn't seem as musical as it could have been at that level.
Well, I was in the back row, and they actually had subwoofers in the back for the surrounds, and they were so close, apparently, to the back chairs that I felt I was sitting in a butt kicker demo.
I also found the dialogue on the clip that they played from Prince of Persia, which, of course, as you say, has lots of explosions and things falling down and lots of bass. But the dialogue sounded very harsh and almost just shrill to me. So that was unfortunate.
Well, that's because
and
one reason
I
was
wonder
cranked
if
up
a
so
lot
loud.
of
The
it has to
whispering
do
was
with
too loud.
levels, which were just too much, I thought.
Yeah, exactly. Tom just made the same point that, it was just too hot. If they had been able to bring that down some, it probably would have been a lot more impressive. And they had in that room a Runco projector, I think, and
yes, I believe so. Yeah,
micro-perforated screen with the speakers behind the screen. So that's just like it is in a commercial theater. But overall, I was not as impressed as I thought I would be or wanted to be with that room, except for the quietness of it.
Yeah, and I thought that the video on that projector was not particularly impressive for the size and the cost. It probably was not well set up, which surprised me. It's supposed to be a THX room. They may have spent more time worrying about the sound than the picture in it.
Yeah. Cal, what'd you see at the show that you're looking forward to reviewing?
Well, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on those Pioneer speakers, and I may just have to run up to Best Buy and get a pair. But
you said they weren't
$200,
floor standards. Okay.
Yeah. Well, they also have a smaller bookshelf up there, but I'll take a look. But there are two new kind of mid-price lines that are being renewed that I saw at the show, and I'm interested in each of them. One is the new Q series from KEF, which has a further development of the UniQ design, and they have a floor stand which I thought would look particularly good. It has 3 8-inch drivers in addition to the UniQ driver, so there's plenty of oomph there if you like that. And I do. That's about $2,000. And of course, almost in direct competition, there was a new iteration of the Monitor Audio Bronze series, which has smaller drivers in a slightly slimmer cabinet, but also sounded remarkably good for even less money, I must say. So
wow,
those look like attractive things, and it's easy to build an expensive speaker if you have any smarts at all, but it's very hard to build something that is less money and is satisfying.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to these.
Excellent. Did you have a favorite audio demo, Cal?
I would say it was probably the Martin Logan with those small electrostatics. They had it set up right. They made the right choices of music, and it impressed me as a great overachiever in terms of the whole system.
Tom, what about you? Did you have a favorite audio demo? I know you probably had several. Oh, Tom's gone again. He'll be back in a second. I didn't hear.
Point.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, Cal.
Yeah, and that is, I started out by talking about how there was this sort of contest between analog and digital componentry.
Yes.
And we were talking at the beginning, and thought it was interesting that two companies, Macintosh and Class A, have both come out with 2-channel analog preamplifiers that have digital features. In both cases, the digital circuitry is entirely physically and electrically isolated. In the case of the Class A, for example, it all shuts down when you use an analog input. But you can also take advantage of digital sources, and they're ubiquitous these days. Even if you're a turntable guy, you do have some other sources that you're going to put in, whether it's streaming or discs or CDs or something else. And so this is a way of sort of covering both aspects. And in fact, in the case of Class A, this will be their analog preamp, but it'll also have digital features that you can turn on or off, use or not.
I'm really glad to point out, and I don't know about the Macintosh. You can chime in, Cal, but because I didn't see it, but the Class A has a USB input, and it's an asynchronous input, which for audiophiles, that's a kind of a magic word these days.
Yeah, it is. I was impressed with the construction of the two Macintosh preamps, both of them. When we look at the model number, the C48 and the C50. One is 4500, the other is 6500. But each of them has a dual chassis where all the power supply and digital circuitry is completely isolated by a steel partition and from the analog circuitry. So the idea is to satisfy their analog fans who have been their traditional base, and yet allow them access to digital sources and processing if they want it.
Maybe that's the way you were talking earlier about, the combining of analog and digital, and my thought process at that time was, while you were saying that, was taking a basically digital product and adding analog to it. This is the opposite approach. It's taking an analog product for those who really like analog and adding digital to it to give them more flexibility in the inevitable circumstance that they're going to have some digital source at some point.
Right. And in fact, Class A, I think, was showing it with an iPod dock that has digital input. I mean, even if you are an analog devotee, and that's what you listen to seriously, you do listen, let's say, non-seriously some of the time. You might just want to put on the iPod and have it play some stuff while you do other things.
Right, exactly right.
I'd like to bring up one more product that I found interesting, because when I just finished my Blu-ray player survey on Ultimate AV for many months' time. Check out the analog, mainly the analog circuitry and the analog performance of those players. My favorite actually turned out to be a Marantz, which
and there we lost him again. So John's going to get him back real quick, and I'll mention that the Tom's multi-part series on.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. It's a massive multi-part series in which he tested a number of Blu-ray players, their video, their analog audio, and their digital audio, all on UltimateAVMag.com at Tom Norton's blog, which you can find easily from the homepage. So sorry, Tom, go ahead.
But at any rate, the 7004, which I like quite a bit for its sound quality, and the picture quality was up to any of the others. This main problem was with most of the players, except perhaps the Oppo. It's true of many Blu-ray players. They're very slow operation. They're slow to load. They're slow to power up. They're slow to do most everything. But except for that, the best of the lot is apparently still the PlayStation. As far as speed is concerned, but there's a new. Of course, now that I like the 7004 so much, except for its playback speed, of course they've discontinued it now, and they've got 7005. Now the 7005 won't be out, I believe, until early next year. So the 704 is still around, but anybody that's read my piece should be aware that the 7005 is coming. They claim they've made audio upgrades to the output stages. That remains to be seen. We know that sometimes they make such claims the product is better. Sometimes it isn't. We'll find out. Hopefully I get one to check out early next year when it comes out. But it'll be a 3D player. And on the speed issue, I asked them about that, and they said that they've done everything they could to increase the speed, and their benchmark was the PlayStation. That doesn't mean they matched the PlayStation. It means that's what they were shooting for. So we'll find out. But it's
a reasonable benchmark because the PlayStation is really fast at loading discs and so on.
It is a $9,000 Blu-ray player. It's something that's not cheap. But but it also has the usual all the new Blu-ray players coming out with internet connection capability, and it has all that too. Plus being 3D and hopefully, if it follows in the footsteps of the 7004, a very good performance.
What was your favorite video demo, Tom?
That's hard to point out. I would probably say offhand the Epsons. Mainly because,
one of the least expensive projectors at the show. Was your favorite video demo?
That doesn't mean I thought it was the very best video performance, but it was so close to the best and so much cheaper that I just couldn't help but be impressed by it.
Kal, did you have a video demo that stood out for you?
Well, I can say I had a demo that used video that stood out for me.
Which one was that?
And it stood out for the audio. It was a home theater set up with in-walls in the front and freestanding speakers in the rear from a German company, Atom Audio.
And I missed Atom Audio. Doggone it. They were one I was going to go see.
And they make some very, very high-end studio monitors. In fact, I'm hoping to get a pair of their powered or semi-powered studio monitors for review soon. But they have a wide range of products. And the in-walls with the freestanding passive speakers in the rear were one of the most seamless and well-balanced multi-channel demos that I heard. That, and I think the other one I would put in that category is Wisdom Audio.
Yes, I did hear the Wisdom Audio demo, and I thought it was very impressive. Really good bass from that gigantic subwoofer that they had there, which was new this year. The STS, I believe, $10,000. But the rest of their in-walls are extremely good. I'm surprised that Adam had in-walls in the front and freestanding in the rear.
Well, I think it had to do with the design of the booth. Because the booth had a front wall, which is where the display was, and it had no rear wall. So the two passives sitting on stands at the back defined the listening area. But
there was no wall in the back.
That's right. But it worked. It worked surprisingly well.
Wow. Well, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're just about out of time, so I want to thank both of you very much for being with me today. It was a great roundup of the show, and next year in Indianapolis, eh?
Looking forward to it.
Any last words?
Well, no. I can tell you one thing. I was uncertain about whether we'd have a lot to talk about, but it turns out there is tons to talk about. There's probably more. So anyone who wants to follow up what we're blogging on our own websites and on the magazines we write for, there's going to be more detail.
Yes, exactly right. That was my last point to make was, Kal, your blog's going to be up late tonight probably on stereophile.com.
Yes.
And Tom, your blog has been ongoing on hometheatermag.com.
Yes, I just posted what probably will be the last entry. So,
so I encourage all of our listeners to go check that out. Home Theater Mag also had Mark Fleischman blogging about audio and Daryl Wilkinson, no relation, blogging about a variety of sort of interesting topics. So there's a lot of coverage there. You can read my coverage at ultimateavmag.com. I was blogging all week long. And in fact, I have so much to say, I'm going to continue blogging for the rest of the week. Even though the show is over, but there's more stuff that I couldn't get to while I was there. So at least it's more content for me to put on my site. Anyway, Kal Rubinson and Tom Norton, thanks both very much for being on the show. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. So as I already said, you can read their Kal and Tom stuff on stereophile.com and hometheatermag.com respectively. And you can find me at ultimateavmag.com and hometheatermag.com, where I answer reader and listener questions. So you can email those to me at scott@twit.tv. And you can also follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Jeff Rona, a film composer, to talk about scoring and mixing music for movies, TV shows, and games. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I sure hope you'll join me. Until then, geek out.